Hey, Nelson, what's going on?
What's up, bud?
Hey, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
What does a con man, a surgeon, a college professor, a prison warden, and a religious monk have in common?
They're all the same person?
Absolutely. Today on Put 'em on the Couch, the confidence man, the huckster, the grifter.
Amen.
He's just another con man.
Where's the farm?
Sitting on a hill. You see him at the bullfight, the closest to the kill.
You're a con man.
The tower,
Yes, I'm a confidence man.
to the poor.
You stole from me.
No matter how he gets,
Can't have that.
he always wants some more.
And I give people confidence, they give me their money.
Rocker said he was lost and never found.
Ladies and gentlemen, your 2 live crew is back.
What's up, bud?
What's going on, Nelson? I'm Jason McCoy, and as you just heard, my squeaky friend to my left is Nelson Beaulieu. We're the cast of Put 'em on the Couch. Couch surfers, are you in for a treat today?
Well, I don't know about that.
The confidence man, the con. Nelson, let's start with, do you have any stories about the last time you were conned, or have you ever been conned?
I mean, never by a confidence man. No, I don't.
What about a confident woman?
I think I'm naive, but I don't think I've ever been in a con. No, I've never been in a con. I've never been conned out of something.
Well, some who study the con artists say that one of the least reliable ways to know if you've ever been conned is if you know that you've ever been conned. A good con artist would never reveal that they conned you. You may have just attributed to something else.
But
like bad
eventually the
luck
reveal would have to reveal itself.
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I do know.
I don't know.
I do know.
Well, let me tell you about the OG of con artists. If you are familiar with Herman Melville, you know, the Moby Dick guy.
Yeah.
He wrote a book in
I
1857.
never liked that book.
No, me either. But he wrote another book in 1857 called The Confidence Man. And if I had stopped there, I probably would have thought, man, Herman Melville must have invented this character. But it turns out about 8 years before that in New York City, there was a man named Samuel Thompson, a.k.a. Thomas Williams. You know, these hucksters, con men, they always have aliases, don't they? He used to walk around New York City dressed, to the nines, right? You can just imagine a real dapper fellow, right? Walks up to other people in the street who are similarly well-dressed and would say, "Do you have confidence in me? Would you lend me your watch till tomorrow?" Mm-hmm. And not everyone lent the watch, but enough lent the watch that when the authorities finally found this guy, he had a huge collection of expensive pocket watches.
That is a stupid
hence
con.
the confidence man was born. And here's the thing. He didn't.
But you have to admit that's a bad con.
That is a bad con, but I think it sort of points to something interesting.
Yeah.
I used to believe as a kid, Nelson, that the elderly were sensitive to cons. I remember thinking, oh my God,
Well, they
I've got
are.
to
That's
keep,
true.
I've got to keep my grandpa off the phone or else he's going to be taken in. But it turns out every attempt to sort of come up with a demographic or a personality trait or a mood trait, some kind of something that will let us know ahead of time who's the most likely to be conned, has fallen on its face time and time again.
Yeah, but
Nelson.
you're talking about 2 different things. Cons and con men are 2 very different
Well,
things.
we're talking about the con men and the
confidence.
con because
There's 100 cons out there.
there's a lot of different cons.
I'm talking about
So think
confidence
about it.
men is what I'm curious
Yeah,
about.
but a confidence man uses many different kinds of cons. The con can be a long con where it takes you months to years to get to know somebody and get their trust. Or it can be a short con in the case of, hey, I'm a Nigerian Prince and I'd like to trade some beautiful gems for $4. By the way, that Nigerian Prince con that we've seen throughout the birth of the internet and email, I know you've probably seen one of those before, right?
Oh, yeah, 100 times.
That actually started 1921 or something
Did it
like
actually
that.
start? But that probably started with a person.
It
See, so
did.
many of the cons we have now can be impersonal because of our technology.
AI and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, not just AI, just like my first Nigerian Prince emailed me in 2004.
Yeah. Well, the first Nigerian Prince story.
And that wasn't a con, by the way. I'm actually substantially enriched by my prince.
Well, very good. Well, the Nigerian Prince story.
Did you ever give one? Did you ever give money to any of those things?
No, but I've got one for you.
All right.
So there's a Nigerian Prince story at least 75, if not 100 years ago. And basically what happened was this prince starts to send allegedly letters to people asking for, again, $4 in return for some jewels. And not everybody sent $4, right? It is kind of a lot of money in 1920. However, enough people did that it sort of raised suspicions when people weren't getting their return jewels in the mail, right? So the authorities tracked this letter down, and who did they find?
A Nigerian Prince?
14-year-old boy from America who had thought this con up.
Awesome.
And was putting, his creativity to good use, I guess.
What was that guy's name?
I'm not sure about his name, but I will tell you that the con just continues, right? We do the same kinds of cons, but we spin them or change them just a little bit for the times. We update them. Now, if the Confidence Man was born in New York City in 1849 by Samuel Thompson, the guy asking to borrow the watch, an even better example of what I think is the quintessential con man comes from, well, the case of Fred. His name was Ferdinand Waldo Demara. And let me tell you about Fred Nelson. Fred started out very young as a con man. A lot of confidence, a lot of charisma. He didn't have a lot of money, so he went to a local chocolatier. And he basically inquired about getting chocolate for his entire elementary school class. Mm-hmm. He convinced the man to give the whole class money. Mm-hmm. And that was really his first con that he remembered. This guy went on to join a monastery. While there, he stole a physician's identity, left there, and joined the Canadian Navy during the Korean War. Managed to get onto a ship headed to Korea as the only surgeon. Now remember, this guy didn't even have a college education, may have barely graduated high school. What did he go onto the ship with? A field guide. He got a real surgeon to write for him, and a anatomy book and a lot of confidence. Mm-hmm. This guy performed surgeries on wounded Koreans that had been shot. None of them died, by the way, because he had a lot of antibiotics. Mm-hmm. And, of course, they probably got released from the ship as soon as they were able to walk. And then if they did die, nobody knew about it. This guy got awards. Newspapers back in Canada were celebrating this guy. Mm-hmm. This guy, finally, it gets back to the actual doctor, right? Sure. This guy was pretending to be a Dr. Sears. Dr. Sears, the actual doctor, said, "Oh my God, I think I know what happened. I was in the monastery with this guy. He's a charlatan." The Navy said, "We're going to discharge you honorably. We don't want egg on our face." He did not get prostituted. He didn't get prostituted. People wanted to believe what they believed. They wanted to believe this guy, right? It's like, I don't want to believe that I got duped that bad.
Well, I'm curious about two aspects of it.
Real quick, Nelson, let me tell you. It goes on. He became a prison warden in a jail in America. He became a college professor. He became again, a handful of things. It reminds me of a movie. I thought at first this guy was the real character that inspired the movie with DiCaprio.
No. Catch Me If You Can. No. That's based off of Frank William Abagnale Jr.
So I'm guessing Frank William Abagnale Jr. came after this guy, Fred.
He did. He started his fun in 1963 as a 15-year-old.
Yeah. And wasn't he like a pilot and a businessman?
He was a pilot. He never flew a plane, but he was a pilot. He got a pilot's license. He also was a physician, emergency room attending doctor.
A pretend.
But he had a medical degree. Yeah. He got a law degree, right? He was a.
So he really got a medical degree and a law degree, or he just created one?
No, he just created one.
Yeah. I was going to say, this guy Fred did the same thing.
And I think they feed off of the same idea, and we certainly can talk about this in a political sense later. But people believe what you believe. They will believe what you show them.
Yeah, if you show them confidence,
Sure,
then they have no reason
sure.
not to trust you, right?
My
Because what would that
favorite-
say about the world, right, Nelson? If you and I were suspicious or skeptical of every single person and every single interaction we had, what good would be even being alive? What good would going out? It would take far too much bandwidth for me to distrust every single person.
Right.
And it turns out, by the way, if someone reminds you of yourself, either in the way they talk, the way they look, the way they dress, the kinds of things they're into, it makes it even easier to believe them.
So what you're saying is it's not maybe so much as a con as a copy.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So,
Not so much as a con as a copy. So,
And, I think there also has to be an element of believability to the sale that any con offers you, right? My favorite
but there's a con out there, I think, for everyone. I think that was the point I was trying to make in the beginning, is that we shouldn't be asking who can be con. We should be asking, what is it that will con you?
Sure.
Because
Anybody could be, yeah.
everybody can be a mark, right?
Sure.
In fact, some good con artists will say the best indicator of whether or not somebody's going to fall for a con is if they've fallen for one in the past.
Oh, sure.
And these con artists...
I hate when people say that. Is so lazy.
But these con artists have lists.
Yeah,
Like,
but
I think about Trump's mailing list. Right? He's got someone that voted for him the first time around.
That's not a con.
Oh, they call him Don the Con, Nelson. Come on now.
That's not a con man.
You don't think Donald Trump, you don't think politicians are kind of like a con artist?
No.
I do, in the sense that they are narcissistic oftentimes. They're psychopathic. I mean, they are pretty high on those dark triads, man. They're Machiavellian. They're good at manipulating. They're good at reading people. They're good at telling people
Maybe you just have a very dark
what they want to hear.
understanding of all politicians. I don't.
Well, maybe I don't have a dark understanding of all
No,
politicians,
I don't think
but-
it's a con to get you to buy into a belief that's larger than yourself, right? I mean,
that you absolutely know that you've fallen for once and it was a lie and it didn't actualize, and you do it again.
well, not every
All of the promises Donald Trump made, for instance, I would argue most of them at least didn't come to fruition.
most of them didn't.
Most of them didn't, and yet people are voting for the same promises the
I
next time
think
around.
if we go down that road as a Democratic Party, I think that's the end of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, maybe.
That's just way too lazy.
Well, look,
that's just way
con
too
artists
lazy.
gain the trust and the confidence of their victims. And the best con artists, I would argue, are the ones that have that magnetic, charismatic appeal.
You know who
And
my favorite is?
And the psychopathic or the dark triad probably helps with that charisma, that appeal.
Do you know who my favorite is?
The guy who sold the Eiffel Tower.
You know his name?
No, I don't.
Victor Lustig.
So Victor Lustig sold the Eiffel Tower
Twice.
not once, but twice.
Twice.
He
Back
did
in
not
twice.
own the Eiffel Tower, right?
He sold it twice. No, he did not own the Eiffel Tower.
And did he
So-
actually get money 2 times?
Yeah. Yes, he did.
Really?
So let me explain what happened.
Please
so
do.
Victor was he invented the Romanian box,
I
which
don't
was
know
a
what that
box.
is. Like a Rubik's Cube?
No, it was a box that he claimed could counterfeit money. He sold
again,
that.
about the copy, huh?
Oh yeah,
About the copy.
he sold that in the United States, and he would demonstrate it, and people would come and be, oh my God, I want that box. And by the time they realized it was crap, by the time they realized it was crap, he was long gone.
Yeah.
Well, if you do that in the United States, obviously you're going to garner the attention of the United States Secret Service, right?
Most likely.
So, and he was pulling all sorts of bank cons, right? He was going and trying to sell assets sight unseen to bankers. He was getting money from bankers to do this.
Yeah.
And he figured, okay, well, the heat's getting a little heavy over here, and he hauls ass over to Paris in 1925. And he reads there, sitting there having his morning cup of coffee, he reads a story about the price of upkeep on the Eiffel Tower. Now, this is, after the Great War.
Yeah.
People are obviously money conscious. And there's a remark in the article. It says, look, people, the popular opinion in Paris right now is toward selling this relic and just stop. So the idea.
So there was already buzz about it.
There wasn't that wasn't really buzz. It was just sort of tongue in cheek, like sell this piece of shit.
Yep.
And it wasn't completely unreasonable, right? I mean, the value of scrap metal in the 1920s was through the roof. And so he works with a notary and he gets official notaries and seals.
Documents and whatnot. Yeah.
Official looking from...
Close enough for government work.
Sure, right? And he says, he is I think he was a member of the Ministry of like Tokens and Posts or something, right? So he meets with these American investors from where else, right? Pittsburgh. And he says, okay, well, look, this has got to stay where I work for the government. We're selling the tower. This has got to stay absolutely locked.
Now, were these mafia types?
No, these are businessmen. These are business investors who worked for the steel industry.
So they believed it was legit. Okay.
And he said it's got to stay locked because the uproar from the people of Paris will be so loud it'll kill the deal. And they had several more meetings. They talked about a price point. He had estimates of how much steel was in the Eiffel Tower, what was redeemable, all this stuff, and he sells it, and he's off. He makes his way back to the U.S. With a bag full of cash, and he said, "Damn, that was great." And he comes back and does it again.
Now, was he ever arrested or apprehended or anything like that? Do you know?
I think the second time they glommed onto him in the in Paris, and they ended up arresting him and uncovering the scheme.
Well, I'm not sure what happened with the guy. Again,
Fred.
his name, not Fred, but the other
Frank
guy.
Abagnale?
Frank Abagnale.
I can tell you what happened at Abagnale.
They hired him, didn't
The
they?
FBI hired him, and he's
they
actually
said, "Hey,
still alive today.
Well,
he wrote the book on checks and forged checks.
There you go. Well, my guy, Demara, Fred, he unfortunately died in the 80s. However, before he died, he lived a pretty good life. In fact, I've got a copy right here that I'm showing you, Nelson. He was on the copy of Life magazine or something like that.
Yeah, The Great Imposter.
And then, by the way, during his lifetime, while he was still actively conning people, Tony Curtis did a movie based on him in 1961 called The Great Imposter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this guy not only got away with it, but he lived out a relatively normal life. In fact, I think he basically lived out and continued doing little small town cons forever. Groucho Marx actually met him and said it's nice to meet someone that, is a good con man.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, Demara ultimately got what he wanted, which is probably a thrill, right?
Yeah.
And we can get thrills in a lot of ways, but again, going back to this dark triad, the Machiavellianism, the psychopathy, and the narcissism I like to talk about. People with high levels of these dark personality traits, they, like normal people, want thrills, but it just takes sort of a different maybe stimulus. It takes some different context.
Well, Lustig actually tried to con Al Capone.
Yeah.
He tried to.
That didn't go very well.
No.
Well, there's a more modern day version of
the con
Abigail,
man?
and there's a very modern day one. It's a con woman. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Netflix special on a real life person. It was made into a series, so they dramatized it a little bit, but it was called Inventing Anna.
Yeah.
And I forget the lady who played Anna. I think she's also a main character on that show with Jason Bateman.
Oh, yeah.
Ozarks. At any rate, Anna Delvy or Delvy is actually Anna Sorokin. That's her real name. But Anna Delvy is the name that she would go by as part of her con, right? But this was a Russian citizen who basically traveled around, mostly in the cities of America, like New York City, and got in with sort of larger-than-life, rich characters, influential people, started spending money she didn't have, borrowing money, lying. She managed to wiggle her way, I believe, into some pretty important people's lives. She eventually was caught, charged with, I think, espionage or something. She may or may not have actually met Trump down at Mar-a-Lago during all of this. It was alleged that was selling secrets back to or spying for Russia. She goes to jail for a little while, and guess where she is now?
Russia.
Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, okay.
Are you almost kidding? It's like, wow, how forgiving are we of the con? That's
Pretty
amazing.
forgiving. Yeah.
Now, it does, however, I think, play on victims' needs to feel as if, look, it was just an oversight on my part. It was bad luck on my part. I'm not that dumb. I'm not that trusting. I think about how easy it is for smart people, again, to be con. Think about the catfish con.
No, I look.
Think about the catfish con.
That's different. I think when we're talking about look,
you're giving money, right?
Frank,
you are giving money.
Wait, catch me if you can.
Sure.
The Great Imposter.
Yeah.
What's
Fred,
what's the other great
Anna
movie?
Delvy.
What's the other great movie? Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11.
Right.
Okay.
I think that and this is what I'd like to discuss once we get back into the abstract here. I'm interested in the person who does the con, but I'm also interested
in the con,
in just the mark.
Yeah.
Right. Because I don't think it's about, well, I don't want to feel stupid. There's something romantic about this type of criminal. Just like there's something romantic about the spy.
What I'm getting at is after the fact, after you know you've been had, you realize you were marked, you were catfished.
There's something romantic about that.
So
I don't think
I think about the kid, really good kid, amazing football player. I'm sure you watched the series.
Yeah, Manu
Mantateo, right?
Yeah,
Mantateo. One of the first Mantateo, one of the first most successful Samoans that was catfished. He was catfished. He had fallen in love.
Wait, we can't. But that's not a con man.
But he also gave money.
Yeah, but that's a con. You don't even meet the person.
No, you don't have to meet the person for there to be a con man behind it.
But that person isn't by them. They're not compelling.
I mean,
they're just writing shit. Well, ChatGPT could con you out of something.
Seemed pretty compelling to me. I mean, he told people he was in a relationship. He told people it was his girlfriend. I mean, he got had.
But that's easy.
Maybe.
That's easy. It's one thing to do it behind a computer, right? Yeah. Because you're relying on
so you think it's more difficult to do it face to face?
Oh yeah,
I guess I don't.
Because what I'm saying is you're relying on the person.
But you're relying on Mantateo. It's fast. Like you can do a really long, very sophisticated con through the internet, right? Like I can groom people. I can fish.
But you're doing all the. But the victim is doing all the work.
I don't know.
All the work.
I don't know. But I'm just saying. I think that's still pretty difficult, not easy. However, I think the opposite is pretty impressive. If I walk up to you, and you've met me only 5 minutes, and I've got you to give me your watch, or I've got you to give me $100. And I'm going to give you back $200 tomorrow, and you don't even know me. That seems like a hell of a con.
Yeah, that's a lot more
Let me give you my favorite. Tell me if you've ever heard this one.
That's a lot more
Let me tell you if you heard this one. One of my favorite cons has to do, instead of getting you to trust them, which I think is always a higher mark, right? Getting you to trust the con man.
Yeah.
It's the other way around. I try to make you believe that you need to get me, the con man, to trust you. And let me show you how this works. Imagine, if you will, you're working at a gas station, okay? It's pretty late at night, and someone comes in, and they go into the bathroom. They come out of the bathroom, they buy a soda and some chips or whatever, they exchange pleasantries with you, and then they leave, okay? About 20 minutes later, another person walks into the store, and they go right back to the bathroom. While they're in that same bathroom, you get a phone call. You answer and say hello, and they say, hi, I was just in there. I bought a soda and some chips. And they describe themselves. And she says, I left my ring, my engagement ring in that bathroom. I am 20 minutes away. When do you leave? And they go, you say, I'm here for at least another hour. And I go, oh my God, good. At that exact same time you're on the phone, the person comes out of the bathroom and says, hey, I found this back there, and shows you what appears to be a diamond. And you go, oh my God, there's a person here with it. And I say to you, the lady on the phone says to you, can you ask them to wait for me to get there? I'll be there in 20 minutes. And so you say to the customer that found the ring, allegedly, hey, can you wait 20 minutes? And he says, no, ain't no way, I gotta go. And then the lady says to you, please tell him I'll give him $200 if he'll wait on me. And so you say it. She'll give you $200 if you wait. And he goes, I'm sorry, I can't. And then the lady says, can you give him $200 since you're going to be there for an hour, and when I get there, I'll give you $250. And so the guy gives you the ring, you give $200 out of your cash register. And you have no reason to believe this is a con, but the person never comes to pick up the ring. When you go to get it appraised, you realize it's nothing, and you are out $250. I like that con because instead of the con artist trying to get you to trust them, it's basically flipping it. It's, can you convince me that you're trustworthy enough to let me leave this ring here? Are you trustworthy enough?
I like them both. Yeah. I think it's the same play.
But
what is it about that type of criminal that is, and I'm going to put in like also bank robbers, and we'll start from the victim
Lance
side,
Armstrong.
right? I'm not going to put Lance
I
in
would.
there. I'm not
He's
gonna
a
put Lance
cheater.
in
He's a
there.
narcissist.
No, I'm talking.
He felt entitled to winning.
No, I'm talking about like Robin Hood. I'm talking about like I said, some of the bank robbers of the 20s and the 30s.
I don't.
Have
I
you
guess
ever
I
seen-
don't
have
see
you-
those as con men. If you walk up to a train with a gun and say "Get out," I mean, I
No,
think of
but-
it more as a trick. I think of it more as it's
Well,
based on
what is
trust.
alluring about the con man? And I don't mean what makes us trust the con man. Why do we lionize the crime?
Why do we line up?
Like, why
I
is that-
think you're
think
right.
about
I
all
think
the movies.
it's a good
What is it?
story. It's dramatic. I think most of us live our lives in relative obscurity, right? Most of us live our lives having no real legacy.
Well, it's almost
to
like
speak
these
of.
people use that obscurity for profit, and maybe that's something that we sort
Maybe
of
some kind of
connect
emotional
with,
gain,
right?
I mean, look, would you be upset if you found out that one of your neighbors was a serial killer?
Yeah.
You might be upset, but you'd also probably, there's a part of you that's like, wow, I'm part of history. Like,
No.
I can't believe
No,
there was
not me.
someone on my street who was a serial killer.
No.
Well, I don't know
That's
then. Why do
gross.
we lionize people that bilk people for their entire, I think about Bernie Madoff and the Ponzi scheme.
So I think
anybody
that's-
more of
I-
a
I
con
thi-
artist than that?
I think that's different. And I think Ponzi schemes by themselves are a little bit different, even though they rely on the same emotional triggers from their victims. I think it's kind of the same.
Well, let me
it's a
ask you, do
different
you
crime.
think there's anything about your life that you've lived thus far or anything that you might be
What's
facing in the
interesting?
future, that would make you more susceptible to Kohan?
No.
See, I think what would happen if your
I think I'm less
family left you
susceptible
right
than
now,
most
they just
people.
decided, you know what, we've got a better option in American Samoa. A rich man wants to take us in. And your wife and kids are like, you know what, Nelson, peace out. I think that would leave you emotionally vulnerable, and I think that might open you up to a con, particularly maybe a romantic con.
I guess it depends.
Did
I
you
mean,
know that there's a man named, he's passed away, I think 6 months to 9 months ago, a Nobel Prize winning psychologist named Danny Kahneman. He won the Nobel Prize around 2000 in economics for his work into risk-taking decision-making, risky decision-making. He was invited to like a conference right at the beginning of COVID when numbers were just exploding, right? We had no kinds of treatments. We didn't know what the hell this thing was. He's 70 years old at the time with diabetes and other health concerns. And he says, you know what? I'm going to go on this trip. I'm going to go to Vegas and give this talk. And then he started thinking about it rationally and said, whoa. There's only 10 cases of COVID in Vegas, but that's an absolute rate. What was it yesterday and the day before? What's it going to be tomorrow? And he started thinking more rationally about exponential growth and stopped himself. But for a while there, one of the smartest, most critical thinking individuals, a guy who won the Nobel Prize for his critical thinking, almost conned himself into going to Vegas. Because why? Because he, for a minute there, misunderstood data. For a minute there, he got excited about going to Vegas, one of the more fun cities on the earth, right?
Well, certainly, but I mean,
So I think about people like this, right? Like, the 69-year-old
I
professor.
think that's not the same.
69-year-old professor. The wife dies. And then he meets just serendipitously a 39-year-old woman in the grocery store. And she asks him to come over to her apartment for the weekend. And he suspends all disbelief and believes, oh, no, she probably does like me. I mean, really, what are the chances? But we do. We fall for this. And some believe it's because we are egotistical at our core. We like to think that people really do like us more than they really do.
okay, but we're talking about put emotion out of it. The great cons that we're talking about Frank Abagnale, Lustwig. We're talking about whoever that guy is, Fred. Right? They're not even playing off of that.
I don't know.
They're not. I know they're not. They're not playing off of that.
Well-
Frank Abagnale Jr. Convinced people that he was a lawyer. And got hired as a lawyer, convinced people that he was a doctor and got hired. That's not romantic, right? That's just pure ass likable.
Yeah.
So,
but I'm saying we might
what is it-
romanticize the fact that this guy had the confidence, the chutzpah with which to actually put himself out there like that. And then he was also quite successful year in and year out. And at the end of the day, he's still considered successful even after he got caught, in that the United States, as you said, FBI hired him and said, hey, come help us.
for check
come
fraud.
help us.
This guy was cashing so
And so
many
let me
fake
ask
checks.
you, do you think, whether you think Donald Trump is a con man or not, whether you think he's a compass man or not, right? Do you
No,
think
Trump is not a confidence
Okay,
man.
that's fine. But do you think this attempt at explaining why we might romanticize real con men might also help, at least in part, explain how and why we seem to forgive or forget some of Trump's indiscretions? At least the people that vote for him. Is there something in there where we're like, you know what, we're rooting for him, despite the fact that we know he's bad, despite the fact we know he committed these felonies, despite the fact that he should do time? Are we like secretly, vicariously going, he beat the system?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Because I mean, I see it. I see people going, they create memes and they are in these websites and they say things like, oh, Donald Trump is so smart. He's Teflon Don. Nothing sticks to him. Oh, he owned the liberals. He outwitted and outplayed.
I think people who think that have conned themselves. And I think, if you get into the election, I think the only thing that cost the Democrats wasn't candidate quality. It wasn't President Trump. It was just the environment of inflation was so toxic for people around the world. If you look at
or the fickle nature of voters, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't think President Trump did anything even remotely spectacular, impressive. I think he ran a horrific campaign, to be honest with you. But he won because the environment is what it is, and people aren't that engaged. They just know everything's expensive.
Well, I will say, people don't like to engage. I think about some of the classic cons that, if the person comes up to you on the street and they look homeless, what's the first thing you do if you don't want to stop and talk to them? If you don't want to feel a certain kind of way for saying, oh, I don't want to give you money, you don't make eye contact, right? You don't engage. You walk the other way. You pretend like you don't see them. We try to ignore. But con artists are smart. Like, they are going to make you make eye contact. They're going to constantly seek you out until eventually they get you to give a morsel of attention to them. A man named Robert Cialdini at Chapel Hill came up with this term called the foot in the door. He was a traveling door-to-door salesman in college, where he tried to sell like pots and pans. And he found out that if you can get a person, like a housewife, to open the door and just say hello, if you can basically get your foot in the proverbial door, then you can get in, right? If a person calls you, a cold call, says, hey, how are you doing today?
That's not confidence, man.
Well, no, I think it's at its base, this does help explain how confidence men work and help explain how the con works. That's already in our psychology, this idea that if we give someone a little bit of time, a little bit of attention, if we give someone a little bit of ourselves, then they can ask for a little bit more and a little bit more. Look, if I want to borrow $100 from you, I don't start by asking you necessarily to give me $100. I might start by saying,
right,
do you have $1? And then I build up from there. I escalate the commitments. There's also the opposite case, right? Where you start out with something outrageous. Like, for instance, hey, man, can you spot me $2,000 until Christmas? And you go, ooh, I don't have $2,000. And I go, oh, that's too bad. I was just trying to shore up this present I've got for my kid. Hey, would you be willing to contribute $10 to it? Yeah. And you go, oh, yeah, I can do that, right? Now, if I started with $10,
classic sales technique,
but that's the door in the face, right? You start big and then you de-escalate the request.
Right.
So now, by comparison, the $10 doesn't look that bad if you started with $1,000. I guess that's the way they do it when they're selling suits in a store, right? They can get you to buy the $1,000 suit.
Yeah, but you don't think salesmen are con artists?
Oh my goodness! I mean, I think that they're using some of the same plays. I don't know that I would call them con artists, but I do believe that they know how to upsell and they know how to persuade us, given some of these techniques. I would never buy a $40 tie just on my own. But if I've already put $1,000 down on my suit,
well, see, this is why
and a person shows me the $40 tie, I might go, oh, $1,040 versus $1,000, no big deal. You throw the tie and it looks good.
But this is why I say there's such a difference between a con, a sale, and con men. Most people look at somebody who sells cars as the sleazy used car salesman, right?
Yeah. Even though technically they're not a confidence man.
Right, but it's the same.
They are selling you something,
and it's the same sleazy. Okay, well, the upsell, the foot in the door method,
the charismatic ones
course,
probably do it a little bit better.
Sure.
And also, if you walk onto that lot and you say, "I got to have a car for work Monday, mine broke down," they got you.
Yeah.
They got you, right?
But the thing about real con men, like Abagnale, Fred, all these, the thing about a real con man is their one absolute defining characteristic. And this is what I find so fascinating.
What do you think that is?
They're likable.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
And that is something that not all salespeople have. Even you can be a good salesman and not
be likable. It's not going to work out.
But there's something, and maybe that's where
That's
that
what I'm saying. There's
romantic
that charisma.
element
There's
comes.
that
It's
charisma.
like, man, that guy was fun.
Well, some argue you can't have that likable factor. You can't have that charisma if you're not a little bit dark. Again, I think we've explored that on the show before. It's like,
well, why don't you explain the
this is
dark
what I'm-
triad?
well, this is
Let's
what I
take
mean
a
about
break and then you can
politicians.
go. Let's get into the dark triad for
All
a
right,
minute because I don't think our listeners have heard that before.
Yeah.
Back 50 years ago, there were con men, and that stood for confidence man. They were well-dressed. They had a great vocabulary. They were a very likable person, and that's how they swindled you. Most people know me from the movie Catch Me If You Can. You know, between 16 to 21, I impersonated an airline pilot, a doctor, a lawyer. I wrote $2.5 million worth of bad checks. I was arrested when I was 21 years old. When I was 26 years old, the government offered to take me out of prison on the condition I go to work with an agency of the federal government for the remainder of my sentence. I agreed. I've been working with the FBI now for about 43 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, I'm Jason McCoy alongside my friend and host, Nelson Beaulieu. We're the cast that put him on the couch, and today we're talking about the con, the grift.
Why don't I ever get to say my own name?
I don't know. I try to move it along, because I'm the one that edits this, and I have to move it along.
All right. What is the dark triad, and how does it relate to a successful con man?
So the dark triad is a term we use for some less than positive personality traits. At least 25 years ago, a man named Delroy Paulus from Canada, a Canadian researcher, started thinking about the fact that most personality tests, most personality traits that academics care about are quite positive. The kinds of things that, you wouldn't mind someone referring to you as. He has humility. He's trustworthy.
Sexy.
He's extroverted. He's honest. He's amicable.
Oh,
right?
do go on.
Yeah. However, not everyone is full of only positive personality traits. I mean, federal penitentiaries have to be full of people who have some, less than savory personality traits. And so Paulus and his colleagues, Aaron Buckles and a man named Jones, they came up with 3 dark personality traits and created this questionnaire and were able to substantiate it through rigorous experimentation and demonstrate that, all of us, whether we are a criminal or a saint,
Or a pope,
fall somewhere along a dimension of these 3 different dark triad traits.
I want our listeners to know before you go any further.
Yeah.
I've taken this.
Yeah.
And I was pretty
dark?
pretty damn close to saintly.
Well, here's the thing I tell my students when we take this. Even if you score really high on one or more of these dark triad traits, you are a subclinical population. In other words, I didn't find my students in prison. They aren't court ordered to come to me and to give it to them.
Yeah.
So I want you to know that even if you score high on,
I scored low.
if you scored high on
Very
one of them,
low.
it wouldn't have mattered, right? And vice versa. If you score low, that doesn't mean you're actually that low. Because you're a subclinical population.
Okay.
The standard,
Yeah.
right? The averages and the standards and the norming groups that we compare your scores to are based really on those clinical
Clinical. I got
populations,
you.
right? So we don't really know how to interpret a non-clinical population.
Hey,
but
real
it
quick
is
though,
sort of
wouldn't
fun.
that be kind of true of most psychological
Yes,
studies?
absolutely, 100%.
Oh, see, I
And
never
that's
thought
why I
about that
refer to
before.
like anxiety that an average person has, whether it's high or low, as trait anxiety.
So I know you don't like the term normal, and psychologists
Right.
don't to begin with, but like we don't really know what any baseline normal
No, that's
would look
why
like.
I call
because it's-
everything trait.
Gotcha. Okay.
Trait anxiety, trait procrastination, trait nostalgia, trait depression.
I got you.
It's just kind of a catch-all term for, hey, it may be bad, it may not, since we don't know if you're clinical or not.
All right. So what are the 3 pieces of
Yep.
the triad?
So you've
Give me the
got
first piece.
number 1, Machiavellianism, named after Machiavelli and
Machiavelli,
the
yeah.
Prince. Right?
Don't get me started on how misinterpreted that is.
This idea is that people who are high on Machiavellianism are the kind of people that are good at manipulating, good at exploiting other people, good at reading other people,
and mostly good at justifying that behavior.
and good at
I'm
getting
saying
what you want out of someone.
right.
And sometimes they don't even know that they're giving it up to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like manipulating somebody with without even necessarily drawing attention to the fact that you're manipulating them. I always think of this as the really savvy criminal, right? It's the one that's a real mastermind, I think. Then there is the psychopath.
Your international jewel thief.
Yeah. So then Anna Delvy and all the others.
Yeah.
Right? Now, then you have psychopath or psychopathy.
Now,
and that
can I
is
just
not
say
murderous. That is not crazy. That is more of a, I am interested in people. I like to read people. Again, I like to take advantage of people. It might also be that I like to break the rules. I don't like to work within the confines of the law necessarily. Again, it doesn't mean that you're going to murder somebody, but if you do break a rule or murder somebody, it's more dumb. I think of the psychopath compared to the Machiavellian as I'm the dumb criminal, right? I don't think about the consequences as carefully as I would if I were Machiavellian. I'm not going to plan my attack quite as shrewdly if I'm the psychopath. It's almost like there's more impulsivity to the psychopath. And then finally, one that you're probably familiar with because it's all over TikTok, and nowadays everybody feels like they've had to endure the narcissist, right? Narcissistic personality or narcissistic traits represent a sense of entitlement, self-absorption, the belief that you are more important than you really are. And so the idea behind this is, yeah, if you're narcissistic, you are definitely of the opinion that what happens to you in life, no matter if you have to cheat a little bit for it, you deserve it, right? And so that's why I mentioned
Donald Trump.
And that's why I mentioned Lance Armstrong, only because, look, he was an incredible athlete, right? No doubting it. He did beat testicular cancer. He overcome a lot of odds. He was an amazing athlete, and yet he cheated. And so some would argue, well, yeah, and his narcissism probably led him to do it because the idea is I deserve to win. I am the best athlete. And therefore, it's not really cheating because I'm so good anyway. Donald Trump, when he picks that golf ball up and takes a first, a second, a third mulligan, right? Or when he tips it a couple of times into the cup, I don't think he thinks anything of it. He thinks to himself, well, I know I dragged that ball into the cup, but it's so close. I'm so good, I would have made it anyway. I don't want to waste time.
Well, let's focus on that Machiavellian part of the triad.
Sure.
And I want to ask a question because there is only one element that I can see that is missing between the individual who cons people and not the psychopath, but the sociopath who becomes a serial killer.
Okay.
Both, like I think of somebody like Ted Bundy, very likable.
Yeah, I mean, again,
very
the
likable
charisma
guy.
is definitely there, right?
So, what factor on the triad? Is it
I don't
just,
think anyone knows exactly. I don't think there is.
Is there a masochism there that is?
No,
is
there
that the
isn't.
only thing that we add to the?
Now we can
to the
add one
triad?
more. The triad has been actually added to. Paulus added in 2015 sadism.
Wait, is sadism hurting others or hurting yourself?
Hurting others,
Okay, so-
humiliating others, shaming others, someone who's interested in blood and gore and violence. Again, for an average person, it might just mean you're into bloody horror movies or video games, right? For your average trait sadism. But for an actual sadist, it might mean that you actually do enjoy hurting people.
But there is physically. Because obviously the
physically,
con man
sexually,
still
yeah.
hurts people.
Yeah,
But
psychologically.
I mean, they do seem rather similar when we talk about their personality. They're very likable. They're very intelligent.
Yeah, I just don't
they're
know if those
charismatic.
correlate or not. I just do know that you are probably right when it comes to we like the con men, or they kind of present as someone that, wow, I can't put my finger on it, but I like this person, right?
Yeah.
And again, part of it is I want to trust people, particularly if they remind me of myself. I think that also goes to show you that good con men, good confidence men, are going to play the long game and get to know you first. They're going to do their reconnaissance on you first so that when they do come to your attention, you're going to feel like, oh my God, I feel like we've met before. And they'll be thinking, yeah, we have. I've been tracking you, following you.
Have you ever seen...
I thought you were going to ask if I ever did that to anyone. Did I ever stalk anyone to find out who they were? And yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. When I was in college, I stalked people that I was interested in dating. Not in a creepy way, but would I like ask people about people? Hey, does that girl have a boyfriend? Would I ask other girls, hey, do you know her? Would I, again, try to get some recon, get some information, some ops on someone so that whenever I did get a chance to meet them, I could play up my love of this particular musical group, or I could play up my love of this particular subject. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Some would argue that that's creepy or wrong. Others would say, well, look, I mean, you're just trying to give yourself an edge, the foot in the door again, right? If you step to someone, whether they're attracted to you or not, and you say, hey, I'm an atheist and I like you two and I hate dogs, that may or may not go over well, right?
But con men who sell, Romanian boxes and
Eiffel Towers.
and sell Eiffel Towers, they don't play a long game. They might.
They can't,
and
right?
I think that speaks to something that I want to talk about now, which is one of the most, and you can put it in a sexual category, or in terms of the opposite sex, the same sex, it doesn't matter. One of the most alluring and devastatingly interesting qualities is confidence.
Oh yeah.
You're never going to see the guy in the corner or the guy. In fact, this is very interesting.
No, they're not going to crowd around him.
You're going to like.
They're not going to crowd around him.
When they, so you were talking about Dancing with the Stars.
Mm-hmm. Anna Delvy, yeah.
I was watching the Today Show, and they were talking about summer dancing and all that thing, and they were talking about sexy dancing. And what defines a good dancer? Now, me
basically just take whatever you do and it's the opposite, right?
I know I'm a good dancer.
No,
goodness! Well, excuse me.
Oh my goodness, ladies and
I own the floor.
Okay.
Now,
you heard it here
for
first.
Women,
look, I think
for women, how
if
do
we
you own
do
the
have
floor?
a live event sometime in the near future, right? Maybe our next anniversary, we go down to a local bar or a local watering hole, have some hors d'oeuvres, some drinks, right? Give away some T-shirts and hats. I think we could get more couch surfers if you agreed to taking the floor and showing us some of those moves.
I'll show you.
Okay.
Whatever you want to see.
You heard him say it here, folks.
So what they found was that women were evaluated as being a good dancer based on hips and how they move their hips.
Oh, well, we knew that. Shakira said hips don't lie.
Easy. For men, what do you think was the defining characteristic of a good dancer versus a bad dancer?
How big their hands and feet are.
No.
How
it wasn't
whether
physical.
Or not I was going to say whether they were just even out there.
Here's what it was.
You had the confidence to hit the floor.
Not just hit the floor, risk taking.
What
type of risks are you taking on the floor?
Oh yeah, are you turning flips? Are you break dancing?
Not just that, but like, are you there?
Yeah.
Are you going through the motions,
Look,
or
I
are
agree
you
with that.
owning the
I
motions?
agree with that. I think my brother.
I think confidence is just a trait that,
Look,
and I'm interested in confident
I can't
people.
disagree with that. My brother Andy will definitely vouch for me. He and I, during our days in college, used to go to these clubs. Shout out to the Edge. Shout out to what were some of the others? The Edge was one of our favorites. Planet Rock was another one. Philip Ellenberg. I mean, we would go out, man, and we would hit that dance floor. And at first, we had no moves. But we were out there. And we'd look around, and before you know it, some women would be hitting the floor with us. Not with us, but they'd be on the floor dancing.
Yeah.
And their boyfriends or their suitors would be sitting around pouting in their beer at the tables. And we would just stay out there, man. We would just stay out there and smile and continue dancing and continue laughing. And before you know it, people were gravitating.
All right, well, think about it this way, right? Give me some professions, spitball, rapid fire.
Yeah.
Where you're a single guy and you want to have many partners, many women, single guy. Give me some professions that you're going to look at.
I'm going to be looking at things that, number one, get me in front of the same sex or the opposite sex.
Faster. Give me some rapid fire.
I don't know.
Sexy professions.
Sexy professions. A dancer, a photographer, a movie director.
Oh my God.
An actor.
You're too cerebral. Let me tell you what you want to be. You ready?
Professor.
Fireman.
Yeah.
Police officer. Soldier.
Yeah, these are the machismic masculine types.
Certainly professor, that's true as well, right?
But
that's
there's other things, right? You don't have to be physically
I'm not
strong.
Saying that. I just gave you the first three, but a professor is one of them, right?
Dance teacher.
And so you take all of this and you take this natural allure that people have when it comes to confident people, and then you get a confidence man coming in and saying, "How you doing? I work for the French government. Boy, do I have an opportunity. But look, this has got to stay lock and key.
Yeah.
This is here." And if you like that, and it's funny, some of that stuff is just, I don't know, what do the French call it? The je ne sais quoi,
Je ne sais
right?
quoi.
Yeah.
So do you believe you can fake it till you make it? I definitely did on the dance
Absolutely.
floor. What would it take then?
Absolutely.
So young men listening to us right now, wanting to maybe be a little more persuasive in their romantic attempts.
Well, I
be
think
a little more
confidence people don't have to persuade.
How do you pretend until you make it? Is it a suit? Do they need to put on a suit? Do they
Certainly
need to learn how to walk?
Yes.
Do they need to
cock of the walk?
Do they need to befriend someone that already has this confidence?
Well, Jason, you know better than I do, right? I'm not the psychologist. That people communicate mostly through nonverbal, right? Body language, tone, and so walk, absolutely.
Dress,
right? Absolutely. I mean, shuffling your feet. No. You better walk. The phrase we used in the military was when you walk in a room, it better be like your penis has been there for 2 minutes before you got there.
I tell my students sometimes, I'm like, look, even if you're not an A student, even if you're not super into the class or cerebral, just being there is a big win.
Being there is a win.
Being in the
Participating
class
is a big win.
Being able to say, look, I am a college student. I am going
right.
somewhere.
That's
Here's
right.
the evidence that I'm going somewhere.
That's right.
Here's the evidence that it's up from here, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Well, I think about people like actors. I feel like confidence men probably believe their own con to some extent, at least when they're in it. You know what I mean? Like method actors. I bet you they believe that they are a pilot when they're a pilot, or a doctor when they're a doctor. I mean, this guy cut on people. Fred did.
Yeah, he cut on people.
See, Frank Abagnale Jr. never cut on people.
Let me tell you this, man. I actually thought as I was preparing for this show today, I said, I wonder if there are examples of con men who've been conned. And yes, it's filled throughout Anna Kournikova.
Makes perfect sense.
Maria Kournikova's book, The Confidence Man. She wrote this book, 10 or 15 years ago. She's Columbia and Harvard educated. She's a journalist more than a psychologist, but she knows a little bit about both, right? And she wrote the book, The Confidence Man. And yeah, she does actually mention that there are some really good con artists who themselves admit that they had been conned.
Well, because, hubris.
Yeah.
Well, there's a great movie.
Yeah. If you say you can't be conned, again, back to what I said earlier, maybe that suggests that, hey, you might be a good mark.
There's a movie called, it's a fictional movie, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels.
Yeah, I love it.
Right?
That's
Michael Caine.
and
Martin, or Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's absolutely great. But these are two confidence men who compete against each other and try to con an innocent, lovely young woman who ends up conning them.
Yes. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I think it's HBO. It could be Showtime. But there was a show with, is it Yitzhak Rabisi? Giovanni Ribisi?
I was going to say Yitzhak.
Giovanni Ribisi? Yeah, it's called Sneaky Pete.
Oh, okay. All right.
If you haven't seen that, ladies and gentlemen, you should maybe take a peek at that. It's a beautiful example. He starts off in prison and kind of, when he gets out, he's hitting the streets and he's conning everybody every which way but loose. But it's the great Giovanni Ribisi, and he stars in, I don't know if there's any more seasons for that or not. I know there was 4 or 5 of them.
That sounds funny.
As Sneaky Pete.
Sneaky Pete.
And he's a good one, man. He's got a lot of cool cons, including some of the ones we've talked about here today.
That sounds interesting. I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, take a look at that. Well, man, we've got a couple of interesting things coming up in the near future. I actually have a little show dedicated to many of my listeners who
we have a special guest
in.
On that, don't we?
We got your sister on there and got really people from all over the Southeast. I interviewed about, 33 people, Nelson. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to get sound bites from everybody, but I'm going to do the best I can. I've been editing this thing for the past 3 or 4 days, and hopefully I'll have something ready in the next week or so. But this thing is called Good Grief, the Morning After Feel. And we're going to take a look at really what was the first kind of impression, what was the first thing people felt when they learned, whether they learned it before they went to bed or after they got up on election day, when Donald Trump had won the re-election. What were people thinking? What were people feeling? So gonna talk a little bit about grief, this idea of ambiguous grief, the grief that you can't really put your finger on, you can't really control.
That sounds good.
Yeah. And then we also have one on James Baldwin and basically what would he think now about race relations? Would he think that we've gotten closer to the promised land, or would he say we've taken a couple steps back? I got the great friend and colleague Letty Gore going to come on to talk about that in the near future. What else, Nelson? What else is we got on the docket?
Oh, we have an episode on Christmas and fairy tales. So we did that. We mentioned last year. We
got one on circumcision called Just the Tip.
Just the Tip on
We've been
circumcision.
thinking about that, honestly, like medical procedures that.
We got one on routine, like your morning
routine.
Yeah, so we got a ton coming up.
Yeah, we got a lot of fun. Well, Nelson, I appreciate you, man. It's been fun. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. And
enjoy your weekend, listeners.
If you haven't done so, please take a look at our back catalog. Share our episodes with a friend or two. And don't forget, rate us, leave us a comment, like us, help us move up the rankings so that we get that algorithm to send our episodes out to more and more people.
That way you guys can have some commercials.
Take care.
From handcuffs and house arrest to Dancing with the Stars. Anna Sorokin, also known as Anna Delvy, is going to be on the upcoming season of the TV show. She's the con artist convicted of swindling banks, hotels, and friends in 2019. Netflix even created a miniseries about her called Inventing Anna. Now also a podcast host, she's previously said she never uses the term con artist for self-reference.